So thank you. And now we have coming up, our next session is from the Producers Guild of America, and it's called The Producer's View of Virtual Production.
I'm excited to introduce this panel of truly talented producers who are all experts in virtual production. This will be a fun, informative conversation, and there'll be some time at the end for questions. So I'll start with Christina. Christina Lee Storm is the founder of Asher XR, Vice Chair of Diversity and Inclusion for AIS, and is also a PGA New Media Board delegate. She's an award-winning producer with a unique blend of animation, real-time, and live-action feature producing, working at the cross-section of story and technology. And Christina right now is working on location, so thanks for joining us all the way from Vancouver. We also have Kathryn Brillhart. Kathryn's an award-winning cinematographer and VFX producer. She's currently the executive producer and director of virtual production on the film Ripple Effect, a short R&D film that just recently completed production. The project explores two different LED wall smart stage workflows, as well as the use of real-time visualization techniques to develop COVID protocols, very timely, during film planning and production. And finally, John Canning is the executive producer for New Media and Experiential at Digital Domain, and former chair of the PGA New Media Council. He focuses on VFX for any screen, big or small, and has a long history in new and emerging formats for entertainment. So welcome, everybody. And I'll let everybody do a brief introduction of themselves, starting with Christina.
Thanks. I also just want to thank AIS and this entire conference. It's a really important topic that we're covering, and also want to thank our moderator, Jenni Ogden, and the Producers Guild for partnering together. I find it just really fortunate myself to be having a background in production. I did a lot of work not only in features, documentaries, and short form content, but what was interesting was I also had a background and work experience in visual effects at Rhythm and Hues. From there, it took me to a path to DreamWorks Animation, where Bonnie Arnold recruited me to come and work at the studio. She was the co-president at the time, and she it was really, really great. It was a look into how animation is produced. I started in feature technology, building the pipeline, and then also artist management. But then the last few years, I worked as the head of the advanced creative technology team, which was a new endeavor for us to look at our IP, look at all of our content, and see if there's a way to just expand it. So expanded in all platforms and all different types of content with AR, VR, XR. So in a very short period of time, when I came onto the group, we didn't really have a lot of forward, public-facing projects. But our film, How to Train Your Dragon, was coming out. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World was coming out. And within a very short period of time, I produced 3 location-based VR projects. One was iFly, one which was like you're in VR flying in a wind tunnel. Another was the Hidden World virtual tour, which was a partnership with Positron and Walmart. And the third was with Dreamscape. And what was neat was 2 of those projects were actually one was we won the Lumiere from the How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World virtual tour. After leaving, so what was neat about the Advanced Creative Technology team is that we really thought about the future of content, the future of production in terms of utilizing real-time game engine. And what was really exciting was our work with real-time digital characters. And just really partnering with vendors and folks that were having this discussion as well. How far can we push it? After leaving DreamWorks, as Jenni mentioned, I did venture off because there was so much going on in the virtual production space that I started my own shingle, Asher XR. And as Jenni mentioned, I am currently on location. I'm producing partners with David Oyelowo, and we are in heavy pre-production, and we start principal very, very soon. So, yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Kathryn, I think everybody would love to hear more about your latest production, Ripple.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. I'm so excited to speak about this. So Ripple Effect is a unique project. It's an industry-backed short film, an R&D project where we had the chance to test LED smart screen stage workflows. We really focused on pushing boundaries for what you could achieve with a pixel in camera, and kind of we wanted to crack open that conversation in a bigger way in the industry. And we're also publishing a white paper of our findings, so we can give a little bit more structure for producers and directors and creatives who want to put projects like this together.
Great. And did you have some slides to show?
Yeah, I do. I will share. Awesome. So this is a wide view of the XR stage that we shot our truck sequences in. The stage is located in Pacoima. We tested out 3 different unique scenarios for our stakeholders: an interior scene, an exterior scene, and a vehicle sequence. And so the picture that you're seeing right now is the virtual content that we created, the stage and the truck, right before the crew came on set. Here's an image that's kind of behind the scenes of one of the environments that they were driving through. So we have different complexities on this one: rotating the world, rotating the truck, practical elements, wind, finding horizon line, scale. Really cool. And then this is just quickly a frame that captured through the lens of the camera. Kind of stepping forward to our interior dining room scene. It was designed in a way where we could use an LED wall to light and also have a digital background that would show parallax as we move through the scene. We had an added layer of complexity using a material like plexiglass as our clear surface going between the LED wall and our camera lens. So we experienced, moiré and other complexities like dealing with darker, higher contrast content that people might not be exploring with and testing with right now. Couple quick images of what it looks like to shoot with COVID safety practices on set. Very interesting. There's like a wider shot of where you can see the ceiling in your full room. And here is also an image of what we were able to capture through the camera. This shot is outside of the dining room looking in, which is why you see the reflection of our environment on that plexiglass. Our exterior scene, the battlefield, we shot at Lux Machina down in the Arts District on their test stage, and it created a whole different world of complexities and test cases. Here I would say the big bullet points were matching a practical set and a virtual set, from that pre-production process all the way into production, and live color grading to get that scene to match, how to design for that. And then I would also say from a cinematographer's standpoint, architecting your shooting map and your shooting plan to shoot in relatively one direction and rotate the world and the characters to kind of match. So that was sort of an interesting scenario. This is just another behind the scenes shot of us working together, and a shot from the camera during our live feed. And then just to fast forward more, we were really excited to have Greg Chacho, who's also an executive producer, head of production and post on the project, set up an amazing remote workflow that helped us through every phase of production on this project. And depicted here kind of in one image is a little slice of what he provided for us. This shows a live feed from the camera and a live feed from a fish angle surveillance cam of our set, so that our stakeholders and anyone working remotely on our project could tune in and engage with us in real time, all the time. And then last but not least, as we worked through our creative project and case study on this film, in parallel, we developed a COVID safety visualization process and project using typical real-time, like previs, tech-viz techniques and photogrammetry with the help of digital filmmetry, ICVR, and virtual wonders to scan our stages early from the very beginning, so that we could not only reuse those assets in our tech-viz process with Live Entertainment and ICVR, but we could also create these amazing interactive safety viz experiences for production to plan around. Our team collected international data and was able to ingest this data into our COVID planning tool. And we could, and the path that we were validating is one where you might be able to generate a COVID safety scenario if you input different information. So this project was in process and helped us along the way. And it's an incredible tool because in addition to this sort of interactive view in real time, you can also generate 2D overhead maps that are a producer's best friend when you just need to iterate and, create a war map or see the data in a different way. So this is very brief, but a summary of what we did on the project.
Great, thank you. And John, of course, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background? I know you're very busy over at Digital Domain. You've also got an amazing background back from your NBC Universal days, and also I believe you're an advisor on several different technologies.
All those other things. And hey, Buzz, I saw you pop in. Hey.
Nice to see you.
Hey, everyone. I like to say my job is now visual effects for any screen. Since I've come to Digital Domain and focus on the new media side of things, it's the not film, television, or commercials. But in reality, it's how we're applying this CG technology, visual effects, to all these other different processes. If you think about the XR world, you think about the game world, everything is increasing in fidelity, resolution, and going in real time. And so bringing and leveraging the background that I had in the immersive technologies and interactive world of interactive television and things like that, it's sort of culminating in this moment of real-time production, going to different kinds of screens, and then, of course, layering this thing that we call virtual production on top of it now. And so at DD, we've been spending a lot of time, and we had to virtualize a studio almost overnight to start working on projects where everybody has to go work remotely. So, for us, it was instantly experiencing these things of suddenly not only are you working on projects remotely, but you have to worry about how your employees are connecting, that the cloud-based technologies that were a good idea or interesting idea suddenly became, let's focus on how do we work with that. And then you get into this aspect of what we call virtual production, which can be simply everything from, well, we can only send a person to a location, so how do we capture that, to the emphasis on previs and setup, to the fact that, we have a mocap stage, but only so many people can be on that stage at one given time. So the remote access, your importance of a remote video village becomes even more important when you may have people halfway around the world that need to attend the shoot or make directorial decisions. And then we get into this, how do we create environments? And Kathryn's experiment, I couldn't have been more timely. That project was really we now have to go figure this out, right? Where virtual production, the idea of using LED walls was interesting, and some shows did it and for particular shots. A lot of that was, came down to well, we don't really need to do this. Never done it before. We won't worry about it. To, well, we need to think about how to do this because we have to limit the number of people on a set. We may limit the fact that we can't go somewhere. All of these things started to play and accelerate this technology. So it's making it a very fascinating time to start being the nexus of this and to see how we can work with this different technology and still get our jobs done.
Great. Let's start this off. Christina, can you tell us just a big picture overview? What is virtual production?
Yeah, I mean, in simple terms, because a lot of people have been hearing about it, especially when The Mandalorian came out with the behind the scenes and how, how they utilize virtual production. And so in short, it's really, really simple. And then, okay, let me just also say, as we went into working from home remotely, a lot of people felt that, oh, I'm working virtually, so that's virtual production. But for everyone here and everyone on this panel, really, what we look at is virtual production is utilizing game engine that enables us to see our assets in real time. And so it's also another way of looking at it from a producer standpoint is we are literally taking our CG assets, the things that John was talking about, and we're able to bring them on into production and actually see those things in real time. And there's a lot of variations in that mix, but when I describe that, and the way we also describe Mandalorian, it's basically final pixel. But I want to kind of take a step back real quick and describe a few other technologies that have been around for a while, actually, that are considered virtual production. And so sort of how I have been describing this is there's, I would call like four main areas. There's the visualization part, which includes pitch viz, pre-viz, location scouting, tech viz, stunt viz, post viz. And then we also have the second area, which is like the performance capture, the motion capture, facial capture, all utilizing virtual production. The third would be like a hybrid green screen, which we're all like that has been used for a long time in sports and broadcast. And then the fourth, which is what a lot of people are seeing, and I like to call like the 1% of virtual production, which is not necessarily a good thing to call it the 1%, but that is the live LED wall, final pixel. And so a lot of conversations are surrounding like, oh, we want to take it there, we want to see that. But I also just employ to my fellow producers that there's a lot of other parts to virtual production that you should really look into, because we of course want the hope is that everyone has an opportunity to use or leverage virtual production, and it doesn't have to end up being the 1% or the final pixel.
Yeah, and I think what you said was very important is there are different tools and technologies. Some of this has been around for a while and now kind of getting lumped into the bandwagon of virtual production because that's the cool, hot buzzword, if you will. But it's again, these are all different tools and technologies to hopefully make a production go either more smoothly, to visualize what you need to visualize. And producers have to constantly remember that a lot of this is interesting, but does it help solve the problem you're trying to achieve? And that's where I think that's the back and forth that folks have to have is, how does this tools and technologies play in to what you're trying to produce at the end of the day?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that as well. I think creative is going to drive the tech. And just for anybody who's listening who's got an indie budget or a smaller budget, virtual production can be a piece of your production. It doesn't have to be the entire thing. Maybe there's certain shots where creatively you need to solve certain problems, and just using a Samsung 8K LED monitor is all you need. Maybe just integrating like Glass Box Studio products or other products that are accessible, that are open source and codable to what you need. You can pretty much tailor any of these tools to specific creative demands.
Yeah. Awesome. So, Kathryn, would you share a little bit more about your experience and how you first became involved in working in virtual production?
Sure. I'm a cinematographer, and I would say for me, the beginning of virtual production movement would be the transition from film to digital cinematography, because it allowed you to see in real time dailies. And I think there are other aspects of our industry kind of over history that have been becoming more real time and more digital and more accessible. And all of these different aspects are kind of advancing and coming together. So all that to say, I got into visual effects early on in my career, and could start seeing from the post-visual effects side and from the digital cinematography side that there was going to be a point where these two things were going to come together. And so it really inspired me and got me passionate about exploring visual effects in every angle. And that's kind of how I got into producing and visual effects supervision. And I think developing all of these different skill sets, being exposed even in that journey to early on, like Zoic Labs, Zeus pipeline that Mike Rumley developed, just these little pieces. And then also through my involvement with the VES, participating in the ASU's Joint Virtual Production Committee since 2013, just being in the room with all of these thought leaders coming from visualization, location, scouting, art department, kind of just being part of this amazing slice of history where the conversations we're all having in one room. So I'm very excited about having the opportunity to guide the mechanics and the test case studies for ripple effect, so that, to kind of continue this conversation with all these departments in the industry.
Awesome, perfect. John, I know in the past we've had many conversations about the different tools, technologies, and techniques in production, and really that they're a tool, and it's about what is the best tool to bring your story to life that you're trying to tell. Can you describe a little bit more, or drill down a little bit more into the various types of virtual production?
Sure. We started this conversation a little bit earlier where, if you think about it now, what we're starting to see is how do we capture a location, right? Traditional scouting, somebody takes a bunch of pictures, shoots some video, they come back, maybe everybody, 20 people on a helicopter going from location to location to location. If you think about it now, what we're able to do is even man-portable LiDAR units, 360 cameras, being able to go capture a location digitally, and potentially at a rough view that comes back and enables a group of people, maybe even in real time in disparate locations, to be able to view that location, decide if they like that location. If we think about capturing that location from the get-go, photogrammetry, LiDAR, then what you're doing is you're able to capture that location. Could be a set, could be a physical location. You may have to then build that and use that for whatever you were going to do, whether it's the previs, but potentially now, as we mentioned, into producing final pixel on an LED wall. And so then we move into the engines. So a real-time engine like Unity or Unreal, where we're able to, they're formally considered a game engine now. I call them real-time engines because we're using them for so many other things other than games as well. But the ability to drop Maya assets into this environment, be able to manipulate the environment, to be able to change the lighting conditions of the environment, it becomes almost a dynamic tool set for a previs and into production. But then you're building a visualization for, say, this LED wall. And look, I mean, they've run visualizations on LED walls from simple just video, right? Playing out video using a DMX type of system to play video out on there. And the classic scenarios are typically car or outside windows. Ripple effect used it in very effectively in that way, where what you want is a vehicle moving through somewhere, but you may not be able to shoot on that location. You think about using an LED platform, you could have your sunset last 10 hours. Right? The golden hour is no longer we got to catch it at this moment. The drawbacks are, still understanding lensing, the moire effect,
It is not the answer to every solution. But what we're looking at is how do we start building digital assets sooner in the process so that we can carry them through. You may in previs have something that's a rough digital asset that you know you're going to up-res and continue to improve because it's eventually going to be on that LED wall as the backdrop. And then moving through that process. And in some cases, some folks are actually using the real-time engines to actually render out final pixel. But what we see it is incorporating that as a tool set into a pipeline. We're still using some of Maya to create some of the initial assets. We're mocapping, but it's the ability to, when you're on a mocap stage, see what you're actually creating. So we drop the environment overlaid in our mocap stage so actors can actually see themselves acting in the environment, moving that through the process. So these are just some of the tools and techniques we're playing with. And again, what it does to a producer is it makes the producers think about, this isn't necessarily about, oh, it's so much cheaper doing it this process. What it's doing is making you think about where you're spending your money. It's where, if we were shooting in green screen, and you may not worry about what's going to be the thing on the green screen until you get into post. Well, if it's an LED wall, now you have to have that produced. The benefits are the actors get to see what they're acting in, as opposed to pretend this green fuzzy tennis ball is a creature and you're in a mountain scene. That can change, that can evolve. Again, the changing of setups, being able to go from night to day. Some of these things have become a lot of advantage, but it also means you have to think about some of this much earlier in the process. The art and the departments have to work together to create that earlier in the process, because you're trying to capture, when we say final pixel, you're capturing in camera both your actor and potentially that background, and you're hoping that that's good. You're not going to necessarily have to fix that in post, so to speak. So those are the goals, and those are the kinds of things we're talking about as we look at it in the virtual production world.
Great. So Christina, what are the key factors producers should know when considering virtual production?
What a really good question. I mean, I would say 2020 is really all about innovation, curiosity, and creativity. And I think...
And safety protocols.
And safety, oh my gosh, yes. And safety protocol. I think when producers are thinking about virtual production, there's a lot of factors involved, but I would say the approach. Let's just start with the approach. The approach should be one, is my show or my project, do I have the right people in place within my group, let's say the director and whatnot? Are they going to be a good fit for virtual production, which means testing things out? Our industry is incredible. We've been doing this for so many years. We've been doing it. It's basically a traditional production is done in such a way. It's very much set in place. Virtual production is not necessarily that. And I think we have to look at it as producers. We look at it from what we know as pre-production, development, pre-production, production, post, and distribution. We have to actually meld and knock down those walls of those different departments. I think we have to think of it really holistically and not what everyone talks about, throw it over the fence type of thing. So what John's been saying is that what I do is I think about, okay, if I want to take this particular sequence and I want that sequence to be in camera, final pixel, then I need to know that at the very beginning and start to really plan out those assets, start to plan those things out. The other thing that I would just encourage the producers is your pre-production. A lot of people think, in production, that's when I'm going to spend all the money. Everyone's starting, the entire circus is going, all the crew members. And it's actually a little bit different with virtual production. You could scoot that over. You could scoot the spend, the amount of money being spent, and the people that are coming on. You want a bit more on a early pre-production part, for concept, for design, for the pre-visualization, for visualization, so that you're really jamming on that. And then when you get to production, what happens is that it's not so stacked necessarily. So it's a different way of looking at it. But the other thing I would say is also, really leaning in and being brave about the technology. It's like, this is the future of film production. And folks like Kathryn, myself, and John and Jenni, we're here to help usher that in. We're here to help create the most collaborative, diverse type of producers and filmmakers for the future. And what's incredible from the other aspect that I would love to talk about is also what John had said about like location scouting. It's a perfect example, right? In today's age, today, with COVID and all the requirements, the safety requirements, you might not be able to deploy a team out to an XYZ location. One is the country opening it up for people, like wherever they're based. And if you can get through to that country, then you have to quarantine, and you're usually going to quarantine for about 2 weeks. So those 2 weeks are costs to your production, okay? What we're suggesting and what we think that are really smart tools is deploying out a local, LiDAR team to capture what you want, and sort of create this really, really strategic and thoughtful remote team working, so that you have your team. Let's say you want to shoot in Morocco, you have a team there that's already deployed, capturing, LiDARing that, and then you can bring it back in while maybe your main team is back in LA or wherever. And these things kind of help. The other thing is that, in physical production, in traditional production, you're always looking for that location to exist, unless and we know that with the use of computer graphics, that we've pushed the boundaries of that. Virtual production is just allowing that even more so. It's allowing that so that then you now can potentially see that, and it's not at the tail end of the pipeline where you're like, oh, okay, so that's what it looks like. And so it's really, virtual production is designed for a mindset of collaboration where you're going to pull in everyone and have everyone chime in, and we're basically paving new roads. And so that's what I would encourage producers when they're considering virtual production.
I have one pro tip, which is if you have Google Earth or the Wander app on like Oculus Quest, you can actually get a 3D view of a lot of different locations on the planet and never leave your own house, right? Like it's not going to go, get you the photogrammetry, the LiDAR, but if you're just like literally going, well, we can't go to that location because, there's the quarantine, you can actually pop a VR headset on and do a quick visit to a location, even on the ground level, be able to spin around, at least to get a sense of it. So it's one of those things that's kind of I'd say lo-fi, but it's a way to do scouting, or at least an initial quest.
And actually, I just want to add something, because we had a cool photogrammetry story on our project. Ryan Argambos, our VP supervisor, scanned our truck early on in the process, like way early on, and then he just did a rough reconstruction, got it going in Sketchfab, and it meant that any department head on our crew could put a scale accurate version of the truck in physical space in their homes where they were designing, and kind of walk around with their phone or iPad as a virtual camera to actually scope out the truck. It was like sort of the inverse of what you do in a game engine. And then we were able to actually host a group in-person session at one of our early test phases on XR stage, place that CG truck with the walls behind us and that smart stage, and have our DP walk us through their actual shots. That actual photogrammetry asset went all the way onto the screen as an animated asset, but it was really cool to use it in the beginning of our pipeline, like you're describing, for anything from virtual scouting through previs testers and final shoot.
Awesome.
Jenni, I just wanted to jump in for a second. We have some questions on the chat, if you don't mind addressing a couple of questions there. The first question is from Jim asking, how are producers now approaching the budget breakdowns and evolving new positions on the crew, knowing that they're going to spend more upfront on these virtual production shows and projects versus the normal visual effects and post hit at the tail end of a schedule?
I mean, I'll chime in initially on this. I think that's exactly it. You know, it's like, oh, that's going to be via visual effects. I think we have to begin to blend those, and it's possibly even like, here's the environment. It's just like a location. Like I know that this location will cost X amount of dollars. So perhaps it's looking at it from an environment standpoint. Like we built, you know, you're going to charge this amount, you're going to line item this amount for this particular location environment. Break it down.
I had this morning I had a call with a producer who has a series, and wanted to jump into using a particular kind of technology, and first it was like, okay, what kind of budgets are you looking at per episode? And then thinking, and having them walk backwards and say, look, you need to go through your script and look at what you're trying to achieve, and then measure up. Like, everything could be a VFX shot, everything could be cool and digital. Do you have that budget? What are the necessary things that oh my God, we don't know how to do that practically. So part of it is again, it's what we've always done, where you're breaking down scripts and you're figuring out what your stunts are and things like that. Now there's that extra layer of saying, is it a practical location or is it a digital location? The kinds of folks that you hire, I mean, look, visual effects companies, we're all adapting that. So it's potentially you're going to your VFX company, but you're engaging them even in pre-production, saying, okay, some of these shots, instead of having you produce them 6 months from now, you're going to be working on them now.
Yeah.
So it's shifting some of that, but it's breaking it down and then starting to ask those questions, I think, is the first step.
And I think this is where having a strong creative direction, like a visual effects producer, or that experience, or a visual effects supervisor up front during the script breakdown process is essential, because you do want that creator to drive some of the choices that you're making about what tools you're going to use. Because from a director's point of view, all of the materials and textures and crew and all these ingredients that you're using to create this process are going to affect the final look of your image, or the feel, or your creative intent as you move down the pipeline. So the more educated you are on how you want to communicate your vision using these tools, and working with producers who are willing to try new things and try new tech, and that sort of thing will make your project stronger.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the things that we've experienced in the past 20 years of visual effects is a lot of creative decisions have been pushed off to post-production. Mm-hmm. And now we're shifting gears and we're getting back to the way it used to be. You built the set and that was the set you shot on. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting time where you have, in some cases, you consider it a playground. You really get to experiment before you make the movie. But I guess there's probably a little bit of a danger zone there when you get on set and you see these demos of like how easy it is to move that building or that tree or that mountain. And I'm thinking as a producer, is this the right time to be doing that? Or should we have done that a few weeks ago?
It's two philosophies, right? Fix it in prep and fix it in post.
Fix it in pre-post.
Yeah, like you could do it like a purist and do it either way. Or, you could be a team that's like, hey, let's do a little blend, and this is what our blend is, and you kind of do a little bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, I think it's a time of disruption. So I think it shouldn't be, if someone's saying, oh, let's just do it this way, that's a traditional thought. I think that's what I'm saying, is that it's like, if you can blur those lines and then look at it holistically, and for me personally, it'd be like, I look at it both pragmatically as well as very much creatively and budgetarily, right? Because we're all facing those budget concerns. So if I know I want this one shot that's supposed to be in Fiji or wherever, I'm not going to get that. Let's say I want to shoot that early next year, right? We're going to still have the same safety protocols. Those safety protocols are not going away. They're not going away. So I will look at the holistic project and say, these particular set pieces, I want to really lean in. And then the other ones, can I still do within the confines of my safety protocol? And kind of be more creative again, because there's always going to be budgetary concerns. And I think then within that that sandbox, then, okay, how far can we push it? You know?
We have time for one more question, and I think you kind of broached this, but I think just to hear from everybody in the panel, if you could talk about any genres or types of shows that would really be able to leverage virtual production. People think of the bigger budget sci-fi and horror films and things like that, but could you weigh in on the types of production where you see this is headed in the next 18 to 24 months?
I would say if your project requires a large travel someplace, that you're not currently in, let's just say hypothetically you're based in LA, your team's based in LA, and you want to shoot in South Africa or I don't know, Australia, New Zealand, and get some really outdoor amazing set pieces. I think absolutely that would be smart, because in order to travel, you don't have to necessarily travel that entire team then over or spin up that. I think there's things that we're facing. It's an overlay also with COVID safety protocols, that we have to look at it, not just like, I want to pick the best location. We're being forced to make decisions based around safety as well. So
Yeah.
Honestly, I've had a lot of inquiries also for unscripted, being able to do some really creative environments for unscripted and competition-based series television that typically you wouldn't have the budgets to do that much travel. Doing them in a virtual stage is an option that a lot of companies are looking at right now.
Yeah, I think it episodic, where you're not wasting money on one shot, right? If you can, where you're starting to look at it, LED walls are expensive. You've got to build the visuals. So then what you get into is, can you reuse this? Is it something that's going to be used for different shots over and over and over again? So you get into that sort of thinking around it. You don't want to sink all the money into that one spectacular shot, but then it's 2 seconds and you wasted a ton of your VFX budget on it. And then the other thing is experiment, because you will start finding what kind of shots do work, don't work. It's you don't want to go and anticipate that you need to zoom in on the background. It's an LED wall. That's not going to work so well.
Yeah.
So it's there is a bit of the, and again, Kathryn went through this, and everybody that talks about it, the PRG team has got an XR stage here, and they were like, the methodology and the shooting that we were doing 6 months ago has changed radically over time, and we learned things. And so it's literally, if you're thinking you want to do this, you go grab people that have done it, and start having that conversation, because it's going to save you pain and anguish if you're like, I'm just going to go do it, and you spend all the money and the shot doesn't work.
Exactly.
LED, yeah.
Well, I thank you all for your time. We're actually out of time. Apologies. But I do want to thank all of you for being here. Jenni, thank you for hosting this really interesting panel. John, Kathryn, Christina, these are the people who are on the front lines of virtual production right now. And so it's really important that you keep an eye on what all of these folks are doing, because they really are on the leading edge of what's happening in virtual production, and it's changing every single day. So I really appreciate all of your time here. I know you're all very busy people. Thank you for sharing some of your day with us here at the Remote Control Conference.
Thank you very much. Thanks for Advanced Imaging Society for hosting us and having the conversation.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
We wanted to get back to some poll results here from the poll that we put up, the second question we put up, which was looking over your personal work history. Would you say that this period in time is the most disruptive period of your own career? So I guess it's not unsurprising that the results were 80% yes and 20% no. So interesting statistics. I think we all feel the unsettling nature of where we are right now. But, we are making progress. And this idea of getting people back to collaboration is what we're all about. So thank you for all of your time today and your questions. And sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but we will try and answer more questions in the chat as we see them. So thank you. I want to send out a great thank you to everyone who's been involved today, and especially to our team here, Gary Radburn and Matt Allard at Dell, who sponsored the event, along with Rick Champagne from NVIDIA, Michael Mansouri and the team from Meetmo, especially Christian Poe and Johan Romero. And a very special thanks to Damian Petro and his brave new media team, as well as our friends at the PGA, the VES, and the ASC. So next week, I hope you'll tune in to join us again with another conversation, this time exploring where the migration to cloud for content creation is going to be during this time. And we'll have colleagues from Discovery, Packet Fabric, Google, and Amazon. So please join us then. Thank you, and have a great week.